7101 was settling in well on Sodor. Many of the engines had heard of his spirit and accepted him, all but Gordon and James. The two engines were very wary of every new diesel that came to the railway. Henry tried to convince them, but it did no good. "You know, Gordon," James said deliberately, "I don't think we need any more of these diesels." "Mixed traffic engines like you and Henry, they say," Gordon replied. "Mixed up engines, more like," James chortled. Henry shot them a look. "Will you two please be quiet? What do you have against the poor engine? He's been nothing but helpful since he arrived."
"Besides," Henry put in, "what about Boko? Him and 7101 aren't too different, and you like him."
"You see, dear Henry, Boko has proven his trust to us," said Gordon. "He even saved me from being pushed in the ocean." "But this buzzbox has done nothing but break down and cause delays. Just like that other diesel," James cut in. "Yes, exactly. It threatens our ecosystem." Gordon continued to rant and rave. All the while, 7101 looked sadly at his buffers. "Pay them no mind," Henry said sympathetically. "They'll come around eventually." "Eventually," 7101 replied, "is the word." The next day, James was still complaining. "A goods train! It's a shame such a splendid engine such as myself has to be demeaned in this way." 7101 rolled up timidly. Excuse me, James," he asked. "Now, what do you want?" James snapped. "Well, I was thinking, such a splendid engine as yourself would look lovely at the head of that passenger train over there." "Are you mocking me? If you are, you have another thing coming, you... "Oh, no, of course not. I'm being genuine. In return, I could take that train of yours for you." "Huh. Well, if you are being genuine, then, I'll be off." "Of course. Have a good trip," 7101 smiled. James chortled off to take his train. Gordon couldn't help but notice from the platform. Later that day, Gordon pulled up to 7101. "Excuse me, 7101, he asked snootily. "Can you get a coal wagon from Tidmouth for me? I need to fuel up before my next train." "Oh, well, I have a goods train to..." 7101 trailed off when he noticed Gordon glaring at him. "But I suppose that can wait." Now that's a good engine. Run along now." Gordon beamed. For the rest of the day, 7101 had to do all of Gordon and James's work as well as his own. And by the end of the week, his engine was growling loudly. He came home on Henry's goods train. "Henry, is it okay if you shunt me in the sheds here?" 7101 asked meekly. "Whatever for?" Henry countered. "Because I don't want Gordon and James to laugh at me. I worked myself too hard." "Well, why did you work yourself so hard?" Henry asked. "I know you had a decent amount of work, but nevertheless." "Well..." 7101 explained the situation. Henry stared, and his face went red with anger. Steam shot from his safety valves. He quickly puffed off to the sheds, where he found two big engines dozing in the setting sun. "You two!" Henry yelled. "Yes, what is it?" Gordon yawned. "You're being awfully loud, Henry. Mind quieting down?" James said. "I will not! Do you two mind telling me why you were letting 7101 do all of your jobs?" What are you talking about?" James stammered. "Oh, don't act so innocent. I found 7101 struggling home light engine at Thomas's Junction. His engine was growling like a bear. He was coupled to my train, and he told me everything. I expected this kind of nonsense from James. But you, Gordon? I expected better." Henry went back to the sheds at Knapford, leaving Gordon and James alone with their thoughts. They were quite ashamed. The next morning, Gordon and James went to see 7101. "Excuse me, 7101, said Gordon. "May we have a word?" Yes, I suppose, 7101 stammered.
We'd like to apologize for the past week.
Yes, it was disgraceful.
And disgusting.
You see, a few years ago, a diesel arrived, causing mistrust, confusion, and delay, Gordon explained.
And since then, we've been very wary of every new diesel that arrives.
James finished. With that knowledge, I think you can understand why we were apprehensive. And in retrospect, we could have been less abrasive, Gordon continued.
Very much so. Will you accept her apology? Bear?
Bear? 7101 asked.
Oh, well, you see, last night, when Henry was, telling us off, he mentioned your engine was growling like a bear.
And you can't live on this railway without a proper name, Gordon said. Oh, well, there it is. Let me introduce myself. Hello, I'm Bear, and I'm happy to be working here, he smiled.
Bear is now accepted.
He works hard and helps out where he can.
He's a common sight on the main line, pulling goods trains and a special passenger train called the Timoth Limited.
The three big engines know that they will always have a friend in Bear. Now, what is this? This train is almost an hour late.
Don't worry, lad. You see, this one broke down and I brought him here. The station master Crunk should have called ahead.
Oh, I see. Well, leave the train there and bring him to the sidings.
Right, will do. Alright, lad. This is where we part ways. Right. Good riddance. I know how you feel. What? Who was that? Those Sodor engines are a real nuisance. A real plight to our kind. Why are you talking to me? Shove off, you weasel! Watch who you're calling a weasel, mate. Okay, shove off. Not that quick of a wit. No points taken away from you there. Now, I think you could help me. What are you talking about? You see, I have powerful friends and benefactors. You're just the engine that can help our cause, which is to dieselize Sodor once and for all. You see, I tried to infiltrate that island a few years ago to plant mistrust and ultimately destroy the railway from the inside out. But my plan was thwarted by the fat man up top. I've tried several times to get back in, but those attempts came up fruitless. We do, however, have a couple of engines by Pil Gudrid, so the plan is already in motion. But with an engine of your caliber on our side, I believe we can get everything that we desire. I'm in.